Discovered my girlfriend planned to take her ex-husband to her office Christmas party to maintain appearances. She shut me out. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I've been with my girlfriend, she's 44, for about 9 months now. When we first got together, she was totally upfront with me about her situation. She and her ex were already fully separated, but the official divorce hadn't yet started. A month ago, the divorce proceedings finally began, so everything is still very much in the early days. Yesterday, we were talking about work Christmas parties. She mentioned that her workplace was running a poll with 3 options: go to the party alone, go with your partner, or just not go at all. Naturally, I asked her what she was leaning towards. Without hesitation, she told me she'd need to speak with her ex-husband because, if people opted to bring partners, she was planning to take him. She explained that she didn't want to show up and sit alone while everyone else was there with their spouse. Hearing that hit me hard. I couldn't help but react badly. I mean, how could I not? She then explained that she couldn't bring me because nobody at her job even knows about me. She'd started working there just 3 months before I came into the picture, and when she joined everyone knew her as a married woman. She said she wasn't keen on people knowing all about her personal business, separation, divorce, and all that, so she just let them believe she was still married, kept up the facade. Bringing me along would be weird, she said, and for now she'd rather everything still look normal by having him be her +1. I asked her why she even felt the need to pretend for a bunch of people who, realistically, are mostly strangers to her. Why not just go alone instead? That's when she told me I didn't understand how difficult this all was for her. Suddenly, I was being accused of making it about myself, that I was demanding to be prioritized. I just wanted some basic consideration, you know? According to her, I was acting irrational and jealous, and that she didn't have to run her decisions by me. She started crying, hung up the phone, and texted me to say that she needed space for a few hours. That was 24 hours ago and, since then, I haven't heard anything from her. I haven't reached out either, because honestly, I don't think I did anything wrong here. The idea that she'd rather have her ex-husband by her side at this event, without even talking to me about it, just feels incredibly dismissive, outright disrespectful, to me and our relationship. It wasn't even a conversation, it was just her telling me what she'd already decided. We've only been together for 9 months, so maybe I don't have any real say in her decisions, but I figured we could at least discuss things that impact both of us. I genuinely can't wrap my head around why she feels the need to pretend for people she barely knows, or why she wouldn't just take this opportunity to start explaining the truth. Maybe I am being selfish and unreasonable, like she said. I've never been married, so maybe I'm missing something huge here and haven't understood how complicated this could be for her. I honestly feel lost. All I wanted was to feel like my presence mattered, even just a little. Update 1. There were so many things running through my head as all of this unfolded. My ex-girlfriend had always assured me she'd begun divorce proceedings. She'd had a few meetings with a lawyer while I was with her, and she'd even moved into her own place back in March. All signs seemed to point that direction, but honestly, there was never a moment where I knew for certain that this was really happening. Sometimes I wonder if it was all just a story she told to keep her life from feeling like it was spinning out of control. One thing that never made any sense to me was why her ex-husband would agree to show up to certain things. Knowing what she'd told me about him, I genuinely didn't believe he would. She always said he became increasingly antisocial, more introverted, and just completely withdrew from wanting to go places with her. That was one of the big reasons she claimed their marriage broke down. Looking back, it felt so much worse to think that, despite all this, she was still willing to take him along to things, even when, by her own account, he'd refused plenty of times before. But in reality, thank you to those who made me see this. This was just her clinging on to an old identity, refusing to face what was actually happening in her life. She probably thought he'd go just because, in the past, he always had, even if reluctantly. She never seemed to consider what a massive thing it was to ask. Given the way things were going, I made the decision. I ended things. Taking some distance gave me the clarity I needed, and thanks to some hard truths, I texted her and told her exactly how I felt. I told her I hoped she was okay, and at the time apart helped me reflect. I said I understood the situation from her side, even her possible intentions, but that she'd hurt me by not communicating openly. If she had, things might have been different, maybe even fixable. What really broke me, though, was how disrespectful and inconsiderate she'd been, calling me selfish, making major decisions without even talking to me. That, I told her, was a line I couldn't cross anymore. Her response stung. She told me that if I was only going to be another source of pain and stress, I might as well leave. She said I was still making things about myself and my feelings instead of appreciating what she was going through. She said she'd be taking more space until I'd figured out what I actually wanted. In that moment, I saw just how invalidating and manipulative that was. I told her we should make the space permanent and wished her the best. Her reply was just okay, and then, a minute later, she asked if she could still use my Netflix password. That actually made me laugh at the absurdity of it all. I changed the password, of course, and when she texted again, asking me to switch it back because she was in the middle of a show, the irony hit me. Here she was, frustrated with me for making a decision without consulting her. I didn't even bother responding. I'm definitely on to better things now, and I promise myself I'll never ignore those red flags again. There were people who reached out to share their own experiences, and hearing what others went through actually helped me understand a little better what her motivations might have been, to just carry on as normal, even when everything was changing. She'd had a bad experience at an old job and spent a while unemployed after, so I know she was anxious about this new one, especially as the stakes were ramping up. Where we live, you need 2 years in a job before you're safe from being easily let go, and she was only a year in. It made sense that she'd want to hide anything that might make her appear distracted, being newly on her own, handling finances, paying lawyer and, if what she told me was true, divorce settlement fees. She would want to safeguard her income any way possible. But still, lying and bringing your ex to events, pretending your life is something it's not, crossing boundaries without so much as a word? There's a line between protecting yourself and manipulating those around you. She never gave me the chance to work through it, never gave us the chance, because she just couldn't open up. As much as I can empathize, it was disrespectful and, honestly, crushing. At the end of the day, I learned more than I ever expected to from this mess. Red flags aren't there for decoration, I'll trust them next time, and if someone ever asks to use my Netflix after a breakup, I know exactly what to do. Update 2. I thought that would be the end of it. Then, last Friday, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize while I was leaving the gym. A woman introduced herself as my ex's manager and asked if I was available. She had me listed as an emergency contact. My stomach did a full drop. She said there'd been an incident in a conference room before the office party kickoff, panic, hyperventilating, someone from HR already with her. I almost said no on autopilot, but I was 10 minutes away and, whatever happened between us, I didn't want to be the guy who left someone on a floor to save face. I went. I didn't cross a line, just told reception who I was and waited where they told me, feeling very aware I was standing in a lobby most of her coworkers believed her husband would walk through. A few minutes later, I saw him before I saw her. He walked in ahead of me, makes sense, his name's still in their system because, legally, he's still her spouse. He clocked me in that weird way men do when they can tell another guy is there for the same person, and I braced for it to be ugly. It wasn't. He just gave me this small, tired nod, like he'd been holding up a wall for too long. They brought us both into a side room and there she was, mascara streaked, trying to apologize to everyone in the room all at once. She wouldn't look at me first, she looked at him. He stayed near the door, arms crossed, polite but distant. Someone from HR was offering water and kind, practice sentences. It was so surreal I almost laughed, and then she finally met my eyes and everything about her face said, I did this to myself. They asked if one of us could accompany her home. HR didn't want her going alone. I didn't say anything, and neither did he at first. Eventually he said he could arrange a cab, and she shook her head and said she'd be fine. She wasn't fine. We stepped out into the corridor to give them space to sort paperwork and, for maybe 3 minutes, I talked to the man I'd only ever known through her stories. He wasn't what I'd expected. No edge, no posture. He told me, quietly, that he hadn't agreed to the party. He'd told her no. He'd told her weeks ago to stop using him as a shield. He also told me he'd been pushing for months to actually sign and move it forward, and that she kept freezing when it got real. No excuses, just facts. He said he was seeing someone, and that woman deserved a life not lived in footnotes. He looked about as done as I felt. She came out then with a tote bag. Her manager had slipped her jacket into it, like a parent packing a school kid's stuff after drama class. She asked if she could talk to me alone. He nodded and drifted 3 steps down the hall, suddenly very interested in a framed poster about data protection. She started with 1,000 apologies and landed on a request. Would I please just walk into the ballroom with her, 2 minutes, a glass of water in my hand, so she could say she'd shown her face and leave without anyone cornering her about her husband. It was so on the nose it almost sounded like a joke about my life. I told her no. Calm, no bite. I told her I wasn't going to be a prop for the mess she wouldn't clean. She went immediately to bargaining. 1 minute, then 30 seconds, then stand in the doorway, I won't even look at you, like she could reduce a boundary until it fit her need. I told her again I wasn't doing it and I meant it. Something changed in her then, like the panic had burned off and the shame came in. She said I was right to leave and that she knew this was on her. HR came back around with the clipboard for a wellness day sign-off and she signed without reading. He took her downstairs and into the cab. He didn't touch her. Before the door shut, she looked at me and mouthed, "Thank you," and I found out I was angrier at the thank you than anything else. It shouldn't have been me she was grateful to. 2 days later, I got a long message from her number. It was the most honest she'd been, no defenses, no you made me feel, just her saying she's been holding a house up by herself for so long she forgot you're allowed to let one fall if it was built wrong. She said she'd told her boss the truth that night, that she wasn't married, that she'd been lying from fear, that she needed a week. Apparently they offered her time off and told her to talk to HR about updating her records properly. She told me she'd called her lawyer Monday morning and set a date to sign. I didn't respond. I didn't need to be part of her course correction to believe she could make one. That same afternoon, I got a separate text from an unknown number. It was him. He thanked me for coming when I didn't have to, and told me he hoped we both go find less complicated people. He said it without malice, like a quiet prayer for us both. Then, almost as an afterthought, He asked if I had one of those green ceramic mugs with a chip on the lip. He thought it might have been his, and she was convinced it was mine. I had to laugh at that, two strangers dividing a life we never shared. Yesterday, a small padded envelope turned up at my building with my spare key and a receipt for a plant we bought together once, tucked in like a bookmark. No note. That's probably the cleanest end I'm going to get. And honestly, seeing the three of us in that office hallway, called in by people who didn't know the story, was the exact mirror I needed. You can't keep your life balanced by leaning on whoever's closest. Eventually, the wall gives. I walked back out into the cold and it felt like real air again. Update 3. I thought the padded envelope was the last of it. Then, midweek, I got a voicemail from a woman with a headset voice telling me a unit in my area was scheduled for lien sale and as an alternate contact listed on the account for her name, they were notifying me. I replayed it twice, waiting for the part where it made sense. A storage facility. She'd put me on a storage unit. I texted him because he was the only other person whose number I had who would know if this was a mistake. He called back on the second ring. He already had the same voicemail. He said he was 15 minutes away if I could make it. I looked at my calendar full of things I could technically move and said yes. There's something about watching a stranger sell someone's life by the square foot that makes it hard to pretend you don't care. The place was one of those corrugated labyrinths tucked behind a tire shop, hallways the color of caution tape and dust hanging in the light like static. The manager in a branded polo asked for ID and, after a tense shuffle through screens, said he could cut the lock if the primary came in and signed a release. He signed. He didn't look at me while he did it, like eye contact might make it sentimental. The lock snapped like a knuckle. The door rolled up with that metal scream you feel in your fillings and there it all was, a 3-year-old life stacked in banker's boxes, taxes 2018-2021, winter clothes, kitchen, fragile in Sharpie that had bled with humidity. There was a garment bag with a dry cleaner's logo yellowing at the edges. It felt like walking into a closet someone had held their breath in for too long. We didn't say, let's divide this, but we did anyway. He lifted, I slid, we opened. The first thing I pulled out was a chipped green ceramic mug, the exact one he'd texted me about weeks ago. The chip caught the light like a small grin. I held it up and he barked a laugh that startled both of us. Of course, he said. I set it on the concrete between us like a neutral flag. He called her then, put her on speaker. She answered on the first ring and didn't pretend she wasn't expecting calls about this. Her voice was steady in that way you get after you've already cried about something until the tears got bored and left. She asked us, soft, like a request she already knew she shouldn't make, if we could pull out the box labeled photos and anything with passports. Everything else can go, she said. Donate it. Throw it out. I don't want to keep a room I don't live in anymore. The line clicked and it was only the two of us and the sound of our shoes against concrete. We found photos shoved behind a plastic bin of tangled fairy lights. Family shots, the grainy kind from a drugstore, her with a haircut from 5 years ago, her mother with a cake, him in a sweater he admitted he hated but wore because she liked the color on me. In the bottom of the box was a sealed card, wedding program tucked inside like a handkerchief. He didn't open it. He just slid it back in without comment, the way you don't touch a bruise because you know exactly where it hurts. The garment bag had weight to it you could feel before you knew what it held. He unzipped it and the dress side out, a bodice with beading that caught every flicker of fluorescent, a skirt that had gathered a line of storage dust at the hem like it had waded through its own history. It looked like a secret, and also like a costume she couldn't fit into anymore even if she wanted to. He held it away from his body with 2 fingers. I'm not taking this, he said. I nodded. It wasn't ours to keep and it wasn't ours to throw away. We draped it over a folding chair like it was a person who needed to sit down. She arrived anyway. 10 minutes later, sneakers, hair up, a hoodie with a coffee stain at the cuff. Her face did that quick math of the room, us, the boxes, the open you can't close. She stepped into the cold corridor air and said hi to him first, then to me. No one tried to explain anything that didn't need explaining. She went straight for photos and passports and the small dumb thing that always feels heavier than it is, a clay dish someone had once made that said keys in crooked letters. She looked at the mug on the ground and laughed under her breath. We were both wrong, she said. It wasn't either of ours, it was this place's. She handed it to me anyway. Take it. It's easier if something ends up somewhere. She signed the closure paperwork leaning against the door, the same signature I'd watched on a post-it once when she left my key behind. He took the garment bag to the donation bin by the office without a word from her, and she didn't stop him. Watching that skirt disappear into a barrel-marked community partnership felt unfairly poetic and I hated that it did. None of this owed us a metaphor. We loaded the small few things she wanted into the trunk of a car I didn't recognize. She said she'd already sat in a room with a notary 2 days prior and that was done. No drama, just its own kind of quiet. She said she'd told her HR to remove my name and I'd probably get some auto email. She thanked us both in the same sentence and it didn't sting this time, it just landed like a period. He told her good luck and meant it. She told him the same and meant it back. There was a diner across the street with a neon sign that blinked dinner because the E had given up. He and I went in because caffeine felt more logical than standing in a parking lot looking at each other. We sat at the counter like men who didn't need a booth and drank coffee that was doing its best. He told me he was moving across town at the end of the month, a new lease with too much light and not enough furniture. I told him I was buying a new mug on principle and he snorted into his cup. "Keep the chip," he said. "It's honest." When I got home, an email was waiting from a no-reply address. "Your name has been removed as an emergency contact." It felt like someone had unhooked a piece of Velcro at the back of my shirt I didn't know had been stuck there this whole time. I washed the green mug and the chip felt rough under my thumb, a small reminder that you can drink out of something imperfect without cutting your mouth if you pay attention. There isn't a grand ending. There was just a roll-up door and a decision made not to keep being buried by something that didn't fit. The air outside the storage place didn't feel new, but it did feel uncomplicated, and for now that's enough. Update 4. 2 envelopes showed up in my mailbox on the same day, one fat, one thin. The fat one was packed with earnest pamphlets about civic duty and a form that started with jury in block letters. The thin one was a bill from the dentist reminding me I'd missed my 6-month cleaning and my enamel wasn't getting any younger. Government handwriting and guilt, book ending a Tuesday. I reported to the courthouse with a paperback I pretended I was going to read and the kind of optimism you bring to situations where you know you're going to be told to sit. The juror room was a terrarium of impatient strangers and a TV playing a video from 2009 about how jury service strengthens the community fabric, narrated by a man with the voice of a traffic light. The coffee was free in the way things are free when they cost you your morning. A bailiff with a mustache that could have been from a costume shop read off numbers and we rose and sat in an odd choreography until mine was called. I went to the 4th floor with 29 other people and the sound of shoe soles on tile sounded like rain that had made up its mind. The civil calendar was a parade of small disasters, a car fender and an insurance company's opinion of it, a dog that was actually a neighbor's responsibility until it wasn't, a landlord whose patients had an invoice. Our case was a leaky ceiling and a timeline divorced from reality. The judge had a mug that said "World's Okayest Judge," which I didn't know I needed to see. He sipped without irony. During a recess we were told to stretch our legs and not talk to anyone about anything connected to the thing we were now connected to, so I wandered the hallway and ended up standing in front of a window that looked out over a block I've walked 100 times and never seen from that height. Down below, a bus shouldered through light like it was late for something important. The elevators in that building are the kind that make you think about your life for longer than you want to. I was waiting for one when the door opened and there she was, a manila envelope held to her chest like a book you mean to give back. He was behind her, not touching, the comfortable distance of people who don't have to perform anymore. There was an audience this time, just the fluorescent hum and a laminated poster for free mediation curling at the edge. We all did that small double take and then the kind of smile people do when they recognize each other at the grocery store in sweatpants. No drama. Just 3 people and a bell dinging because the elevator doors were tired of waiting. We moved to the side together like a little clumsy choreography, let a woman with a stroller exit, then didn't step in. "Hi," she said, and her voice had a tangle of nerves and relief that made something unclench in me on reflex. "Hey," I said, because there's rarely a more accurate word. He lifted the envelope like a proof of life. "We're done," he said, and it wasn't triumphant. It was a weather report. I could see the blue stamp through the paper, the kind that bleeds a little when it's fresh, filed, recorded, something official that means the line is now a line. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it without bitterness, which surprised me in the way getting used to a new haircut does. You catch yourself in a mirror and think, "Oh, that's just my head now." She nodded. "It's weirdly quiet," she said. "All the talking and then this." She moved her free hand in a little circle that encompassed the nothingness after. "Paper is lighter than it looks," he said, and it sounded like a thing he'd been saving to say out loud to someone. The elevator dinged again like it was trying to get back on script. We didn't take it. We just stood there a second like people at a crosswalk with no traffic. She looked at the floor and then at me. "Thank you for not coming into the room," she said, and then shook her head at herself because it sounded odd even as it left her mouth. "I mean, thank you for. You know." I didn't ask what I was being thanked for. There were too many candidates and it didn't matter anymore which she meant. I told them both good luck as if we were starting a race from different lanes and then I went back to my bench and the judge called us in and the leak became an exhibit and the ceiling in question was briefly everyone's business. I wasn't selected. The lawyers did the math of our faces and I didn't add up to what they wanted. I rode back down alone and the bailiff nodded at me like he approved his own sorting hat results. On my way home I cut through a part of downtown I don't usually go, a stretch of storefronts that had survived the last couple years without turning into piles of for lease signs. There's a thrift shop there with a window that tries very hard to suggest a narrative. Mannequin in a sequin dress next to a stack of leather-bound books next to a typewriter that has seen more as decor than it did in its working life. In the center of the display was a wedding dress, and not just any general-purpose gown. The bodice beating made a shape I knew and hated that I knew. The hem had the faintest gray just at the edge, like it had once swept a floor that hadn't been swept for it. It had been steamed and it gleamed and for a second I expected to feel knocked over by it, but I didn't. It was ridiculous how ordinary it looked in a window between a teapot with violets and a pair of silver shoes from someone's cousin's prom. A woman inside, early 20s, a cardigan buttoned wrong, was holding the skirt up away from the floor with 2 hands and laughing while her friend attempted a serious face in a mirror. It didn't look like a secret on either of them. It looked like a garment, which is both what it always was and, in a way, all it needed to be again. I watched them for a second, long enough to feel like I should buy something to pay rent on the moment. I went in and found a shelf of mismatched mugs. There was one with a map of a city I've never visited and one that said Teacher's Fuel and one that tried too hard to be funny about Mondays. I picked a plain blue one with weight, the glaze a little uneven at the lip where a thumb had missed. The woman at the register wrapped it in newspaper that left print on my hands and told me I looked like a coffee person. I told her I was trying to be. On my way out, the dress swung just slightly on its hanger and I didn't make it into a sign. I took the long way home because there's a block of sycamores that do this thing in late afternoon where they throw mottled light like a painter got bored with restraint. My phone buzzed once with a number I didn't have saved and I let it go. Later, when I checked, it was an auto email from a government address telling me my juror service had been fulfilled and thank you for your time, like I had given it willingly and not like they had taken it and tried to make me feel good about it. I set the blue mug next to the green one on the drying rack. They looked like they were having a conversation by accident. The chip on the green still catches under my thumb and the blue's lip is smoother in a way that feels like a small lie. Both hold heat, both do their job. I made tea because coffee at that hour would have been a dare and sat at my kitchen table the way you do when you're trying to prove a point to no one. The city hummed its usual hum. A downstairs neighbor played a song I recognized half of. Someone's dog objected to a skateboard a few blocks away. Ordinary loud is a good sound, I've learned. Later, when the kettle and the quiet had worn off enough to make room for curiosity, I texted him 3 words that didn't require anything back. Glad it's done. He thumbed back a photo I didn't expect. His new living room, walls throwing their first light, a plant trying to climb a stake, a couch still wearing its delivery plastic like a raincoat. The green chipped mug sat on his windowsill in the corner because he'd come by after the storage unit and I guess I put it in my bag with muscle memory and then gave it back with intention sometime in the blur after, or maybe we both had the same mug and the universe has a sense of humor I don't entirely trust. Under the photo he wrote, kept one honest thing. I washed dishes until the water cooled and then I put the blue mug on the shelf next to plates that know me and the green one on the rack to dry and I let the apartment be quiet on purpose. There isn't a moral. There's an envelope stamped and a dress in a window and 2 mugs that don't match but will share a cabinet anyway. The air tonight doesn't feel new, but it sits easy. That's enough. Update 5. The plant gave me the assignment, roots spiraling the plastic like it had memorized the shape and was bored with it. I eased it out over the sink and the soil held together like a stubborn thought. It needed a bigger pot and somewhere to live that wasn't a wobbly apology of a shelf. A coupon for the Swedish Labyrinth was stuck to my fridge under a magnet shaped like a tomato, 10% off, which is exactly the kind of math that turns errands into decisions. I went on a Saturday morning because I don't learn. IKEA is a country with its own weather. A river of carts, children with flags, couples arguing about the philosophy of drawers disguised as whether 80 centimeters is too wide. A room staged to look like a life I could buy, if only I remembered to pack a hex key. I picked up a plant of the color of dried blood and a shelf whose name read like a sneeze. I collected tea lights I didn't come for because they were stacked like a dare. Somewhere between a pretend bedroom and a pretend office I took the wrong left and ended up in lighting where lamps pretended to be moons. It all has the energy of someone whispering, if you place this bowl here you will be a person who hosts. I was in kitchen, trying to tell the difference between 2 nearly identical cutting boards like it was a personality test, when I heard my name said like a question. He was there with one of those blue bags biting into his shoulder, a tape measure looped around his wrist like a bracelet. She was with him. She had a list on her phone with boxes she actually checked, a pencil tucked behind her ear in complete defiance of technology. She said hi like normal people do and introduced herself with a name that didn't demand trivia about anyone. No tension in the corners, no bracing. He lifted a flat pack box and rolled his eyes at the weight. It says 2 people, he said. It always says 2 people, she answered, and then to me, which is their way of saying you'll swear at a piece of wood. We laughed the same laugh and something unclenched I hadn't realized I was busy holding. We drifted through the same current for a few aisles because that's how the maze works. He tapped a long board on its edge to check its straightness and I did the same and she called us the same species with affection instead of accusation. We debated matte black versus chrome for hooks like it would be in the paper later. He asked about pot sizes, I pretended to have standards. She picked out a rug with a name that probably meant calm in a language I will only ever know through instruction. Sketches. We ended up in the cafeteria because you can only smell meatballs and nostalgia for so long before you surrender. He got the actual meatballs, I got a cinnamon roll that looked like a topographical map of a place you can't get to from here. She got coffee and pronounced it coffee with the seriousness it deserved. We didn't do an autopsy. He talked about the new apartment and how the light in the morning made the dust look honest. She teaches kids to play piano, tiny hands learning scales by willpower. I told them about the plant with delusions of grandeur. The table we were at had a ding in it shaped like a small country and a couple at the next one was drafting their future in the margin of a receipt. We ate. It was fine. It was better than fine. At checkout a conveyor belt the size of a runway moved at the speed of bureaucracy. Their bookcase was pretending every box is the same weight. My shelf skated its cart like it had opinions about friction. He admitted, with the face of a man used to losing small battles well, that his ratchet strap had gone missing in the move. I said of course you can borrow mine, and he said of course you have a strap, and we both grinned because some jokes are just facts with their shirts off. We tied everything down in the kind of silence that gets the job done. She tucked the receipt in her wallet with the efficiency of someone who has seen a returns desk before and has the stare required to outlast it. Outside, the sky was the color of cafeteria trays. Cars did the parking lot ballet. He shook my hand, she hugged with one arm because the other was full of a plant that looked like a green explosion. Build only what you have room for, she said, looking at the stack of boxes, but it landed everywhere. He nodded, an agreement that didn't need a document. They drove away with a rug peeking through the back window like a shy flag. Back home, one of the boxes insisted it was birch when the picture in my head had been black-brown. I considered the distance between ideal and available and decided I could live there just fine. The little L-shaped wrench sat in my palm like a truth you don't need words for. The drawing showed a smiling bulb-headed man reminding me to find a friend. I found a podcast. The shelf assembled itself and then didn't and then finally did, the last cam lock turning with that small, private click that feels like permission. An extra dowel stared at me from the hardware bag like a dare. I put it in a jar with its cousins labeled miscellaneous because of course I have a jar. The planter took soil like a breath. The plant unfurled itself into the new space with the relief of a neckline loosened. Water darkened the clay and then lightened again. I slid the shelf against the wall and put the green chipped mug on the top to see if it was level. It didn't travel. The blue mug joined it and didn't sulk about sharing. I set the little Allen key in the drawer with the scissors and the batteries and the mystery rubber bands, the drawer that is a museum of solutions you might need later. Night came on in my windows like a dimmer switch. The room didn't become a metaphor, it became a room. The plant stood up straighter than it had in months, like it had been waiting for me to catch up. On the street, someone dragged a chair across a balcony and a skateboard objected and a bus sighed at a stop with its usual theater. Nothing clicked into place, and then it did. The shelf didn't make a sound about it. The air didn't announce newness. It just sat easy, and that was more than enough.